Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for joining and spending your Friday evening with us. I'm excited to get into our conversation today with talking about ethical action as a true crime consumer and what we can do, to actually affect change in these cases. We're going to give everybody just a minute or so to jump on. So before we get started, and in the meantime, while we're waiting on that, I just want to remind everyone that we are doing our first virtual fundraiser, Jog for Justice, virtual 5K that is coming up through and will be done throughout the month of April. And you can get details on registration, how to set up a team through our website, seasonofjustice.org, and just click the Jog for Justice 5K at the top of the menu there. We're excited about that. I personally will be going at a glacial pace throughout the month of April, and hopefully getting some time outside with my dog and raising money for a good cause so we can continue funding these grant efforts. So again, that's Jog for Justice, our virtual 5K that is going to happen throughout the month of April. And and we just thank you guys all for being here. So give everybody just another minute to sign on. If you guys have any questions throughout the webinar for any of our panelists, please go ahead and submit them through the Q&A feature down there at the bottom. And we will make sure that we've got some time at the end that we will answer some questions as we can. So, all right. Okay, and with that out of the way, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. So again, thank you all for joining us and spending, Friday afternoon, evening with us and to talk about something near and dear to my heart, which is, taking action in these cases and that we hear about as true crime consumers. My name is Kendall. I am responsible for our programs, our grant programs here at Season of Justice. I'm excited to be joined by our 4 guests tonight. We've got Shayna and Tates. They are the co-founders of the Light the Way Missing Persons Advocacy Project. And we also have joining us Melissa and Whitney, the hosts of Navigating Advocacy. Thank you guys so much for sharing your time and expertise with us, tonight. I'm excited to talk about just y'all's journeys, becoming advocates, being in this space, how you got here, and then to just share tips and ways that we as listeners, as consumers of this material can actually responsibly make an impact in these cold cases. So really, with that, I just want to turn it over to you guys and just start out for anyone who who's on this webinar who may not know or be familiar with what you guys do. I'd love to get just a brief background from each of you. So I'll throw it to Shayna and Tates if you guys want to talk about Light the Way and the great things that y'all are doing with that. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kendall. So first, I want to say thank you to Season of Justice for inviting us to be a part of this panel. We're thrilled to be here with the incredible team from Navigating Advocacy talking about the importance of ethical action. We want to just say a quick thank you to our families that are in attendance tonight. Their stories are what makes Light the Way, and we're so grateful that they allow us to share their stories. And we want to thank everyone who is attending and is here this evening, because you are showing that you put value into ethical advocacy, and that is so, so important. So who are we? We are Light the Way Missing Persons Advocacy Project. Tates and I are the founders. We are victim-centered advocates who are committed to engaging with empathy and compassion for the missing and their loved ones. We provide resources and support for families, and we foster positive relationships between families of the missing and law enforcement. And we were founded in February of 2022. Tates and I met the previous fall, And we met kind of in the missing persons community. We were sharing flyers. We got a little bit more active by contacting media for families. Then we started to do a little bit of investigation with some missing teen cases, and we found out we're really good at it. So we just started working together, and we fit really well. In December of 2021, we heard the foster mom of a little girl named Oakley Carlson speak. Oakley Carlson was missing, and she had been missing at that point. Nobody had seen her since February of 2021. So she wasn't discovered missing until about 9-10 months later. When we heard Jamie Joe speak, it resonated with Tates and I so much. What Jamie Joe had to say as a mother and as a parent, and just really as a concerned foster mom who had done everything right to keep this little girl safe. And then the Washington State Department of Children, Youth, and Family returned her to biological parents who were not safe. They returned her, and then they didn't follow up with what was going on in the family. And unfortunately, Oakley went missing. What's come to light in the time that we've been on this investigation is that Oakley suffered terrible, terrible abuse. So we really jumped into action at that point. That's when we decided that we wanted to do much more than just sharing flyers and contacting media and then just really helping to find people. We wanted to be a full circle experience for families where they could come to us, we could support them, we could learn to be advocates because it was really our time to grow and learn. And the Hiles family, who are incredible, have really allowed us to do that with Oakley's case. And while we started to learn to advocate for Oakley, we also learned how to work with law enforcement. And we have been so blessed to work with the wonderful detective who is on Oakley's case, Detective Logan out of Grays Harbor Sheriff's Office. And he has taught us about what advocacy means and what the investigation process is on a missing child's case. And that has been how we started. And once that started out of the Pacific Northwest, we got kind of a little traction out there. And our second case reached out to us, which was a 47-year-old missing mother case. So it was very different than Oakley's. It was an unresolved case for many years. Her name is Patty Otto. Her daughter Suzanne reached out to us. And we learned a lot about what you do for an unresolved case. And there's also a missing Jane Doe involved in that case. So we learned about how to advocate for a Jane Doe. So since that time in 2022, we have learned about all sorts of different cases from the West Coast to the East Coast and all the way in between. We've been able to work with so many amazing families with all sorts of different stories. And as advocates, we've learned that the most important thing is that you're centering victims and families. And that at Light the Way is what we aim to do every single day.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's extremely important work. We're lucky enough to be able to see you guys, speak at the Cold Case Symposium and just learn about Oakley and about the other cases that you guys are working on. I'm just really grateful that you guys are here and in this space, and the service that you guys provide to families is invaluable. So just thank you guys so much for being here, for joining us, for being y'all and doing what you do. So we're really grateful. Whitney, Melissa, you want to take it away, talk a little bit about navigating advocacy and how you got here, and a little bit about what you guys do.
Yeah, sure. We started our podcast in 2020 during COVID. We honestly were the typical true crime consumers. We just loved listening to all the podcasts, watching the new documentaries. And so Whitney was like, let's just start recording our conversations. And we did this in the middle of my kitchen with children all around, no production, nothing like that. I honestly never thought this was going to be put out into the world, but we did. We started off very differently, covering the things that we are not proud of now, serial killers, those well-known cases. But then we're very much the volunteer type of people. We're always volunteering at our kids' school or junior league or various organizations that needed help. And we're like, well, let's just put that volunteer aspect into this podcast. And so we started meeting with families, and that's when everything changed for us, and we decided how we were doing it. What we were doing was not the ethical way. We felt weird about it, and so after that, meeting families, we decided to start using our volunteer skills, as if you will, to go out and help any families we can. So we've done foot searches, honkin' waves, flyer campaigns, anything like that is what we continue to do. So it's definitely been a journey over the last 3.5 years. Whitney, anything to add?
You basically covered it all. But yeah, we started our first case that we were involved with families is the Brandon Lawson case. If you don't know that case, a 23-year-old man went missing off the side of the highway when his truck ran out of gas and was not seen for 8.5 years. We were part of a 9-person volunteer search team that found evidence leading to human remains to be recovered. And while we're still waiting on DNA confirmation 2 years after finding that evidence, because it is such a long process, we are confident that we have helped the family somehow just by being there and just by volunteering. And I think it's important to discuss our journey because we were the typical true crime content consumer. We were the same, what 90% of America that takes in true crime content is we just didn't know any better at the time. And we think it's important to talk about how everyone can evolve into ethical true crime and making more conscious decisions on how you're consuming as well as what you can do to help.
Those are extremely important. And that kind of leads us into the bulk of, what we're going to talk about tonight. For those of us, I came into the world very similarly, as just a casual listener, consumer of this material, whether it was podcasts or on television, but also having that I have to do something gene. Like there are a lot of us that listen to these stories and empathize with these families, but also can't just end and go about our day. That we feel a call to do more. And so, tonight I want to talk about what that looks like and what that looks like in ways for us as, just the consumers with no direct expertise. We're not all, certified victim advocates. We're not detectives, forensic experts. But there are things that we can do to really support these families, to support these investigations as well in responsible and ethical ways. And so it kind of leads us into our first, just kind of big point, like what should we take into consideration when we really feel that call to do more, to step in, whether that's locally or, where should we start if I'm looking to get involved?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is a simple share of a missing persons flyer on social media. This can do so much to spread the word quickly. There are a few things that we do recommend when it comes to sharing this type of content. So you always want to double check that the information that you're sharing is accurate and up to date. I mean, you can easily find this out. Quick Google search, you can find additional information, updated details, and you want your posts to be what is out there the most recent. So, but then after you share this, you have to be conscious to check for updates periodically, because if this person is located, you want to go in and edit your post, make sure it states that. This will prevent misinformation from being shared over and over again. We had a missing person out of Orlando, a missing child out of Orlando on Monday, and it was updated today. So I went in and updated my missing persons flyer. And it's just a thing you have to consciously remember, hey, I shared this. I need to make sure I'm sharing accurate information. always include the contact information or that you can send in tips. That way that the people know right away where they can call, what they need to do if they see a car, if they see the person, anything like that. Also, if you follow a particular case, you can always share recent articles about the victim or write a post of remembrance. I know so many family members they just want their loved ones to be remembered. But however, with that, if it's a solved case, we recommend only sharing if the family is still actively discussing the case. Otherwise, it could bring up traumatic memories, and we just don't want to do that. So let's just be cautious of what we're putting out there and making sure that we're doing the right thing for these families and the victims.
No, absolutely. And that brings up a really good point about, boundaries being with having social media and having such a digitally connected world. It is a lot, there are families that have that operate Facebook pages or Instagram accounts that, are set up in memory of their loved ones. And that accessibility is something that is still, it's been around for a while, but it's still, those boundaries are still, trying to be figured out. There's still a gray area being members of the general public and having the ability to, watch a documentary on Netflix and go to Facebook and have that direct line to a family member. I work with a lot of families where that can center on exploitation, that can be a dangerous level of access to have. And it also makes it harder for families to put themselves out there and be more vulnerable and talk about their loved one's case, simply because they may, they're opening the door for that kind of communication. Can you or any of y'all talk about, those boundaries and how we should respect the family members who are in this situation and telling their story, and how we can still take action, maintain those boundaries and be respectful of their feelings and what they're going through?
Sure. So we follow kind of a rule, and we share this rule with everyone that we interact with on social media. And we kind of say victim exploitation does not equal victim advocacy. So you need to really think about how you are interacting with these cases as you come across them. So when we started, we really saw a need for advocates who were focused on putting the victims first and their families at the center of the story rather than as entertainment. So that's the first thing you need to think about. This isn't a story. This isn't something to make jokes about. This isn't something to speculate about. This is a real person. These are real family members who are affected by this every single day. And many of the families that we work with, they speak about how the instant they found out about this tragedy of their lives changed forever in that moment. And I don't think anybody can adequately understand that until you've actually experienced it. Even as advocates, as much as we feel for our families and listen to them, Tates and I we have not experienced that. So when families are on the internet reaching out for help, they might be on a Facebook group, they might have done a podcast, and you see them, they are at probably a really low point. They're feeling pretty vulnerable, and they're desperately seeking help and answers and any possible ray of hope. So as community members interested in these cases, we need to remember a couple of things. The first thing is you need to remember to do no harm. There should be no harm done to those victims or families in any way that you interact publicly. You need to be respectful of the victim and the family boundaries. If the family says no, then it means no. You stop at that. You need to be factual. Speculation should not be part of the Facebook posts, about the podcast, about the books you write, about the magazine article or the blog post. Facts are what's important, because if you're not factual, it could hurt the investigation, and it could be re-traumatizing for these victims and their families. You need to engage with empathy, because empathy and compassion is what these families need. And remember, as these community members, we are the voice of impact and change. We can change what this community looks like. So if we're following these types of community standards, it's going to be a safe place for families and victims. So if you're an advocate, we think there should be, in your heart, you need to think about integrity. You need to think about honesty and compassion. And if those are truly in your heart, then this is a good place for you to be. And your heart will most likely lead you in the right place.
I also want to add to this that I think it's important, and this is something that a good friend of ours, Haley Gray, talks a lot about, that it's important to remember that at any point in time you're working with a family or talking to a family or sharing something about that family member, that loved one, that if they change their mind and say, please don't share this, or I said yes initially, but I'm no longer comfortable with this, you have to accept that. Delete whatever you had posted before, accept that they have changed their mind, that they have the right to do so, and respect that loved one and that family member.
And I add to that too, a lot of family members have been doing this a really long time and are tired. And you have to, don't be pushy. You know, sometimes it takes more time for people to be ready to do things because either they're simply not ready, they're tired, they've been doing this a long time, they need to step back for a little bit, and we need to be respectful of that too.
Those are all really important things for us to keep in mind, and just as we move forward. Thank you all for all of those. I mean, in addition to, we talked about sharing accurate information on social media, commemorating, whether it's posts to commemorate an anniversary or just continuing to keep their name out there so that families know that their loved ones aren't forgotten. What are some other ways that the community can really positively impact and support these cases and these families?
I don't know if this is where we're going with this, but this is something that is, I want to say, easy to do if you've done the prerequisite work, if you will. So many people talk about DNA and the 23andMe kits. They talk about ancestry.com kits, that they've done it to learn about their heritage and who they're connected with. You don't realize that you already have data that can be utilized in the true crime industry. You just have to opt in. You take the information that is already there and share it with companies like GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA, and they can use that information, which, while it is very, very intimate information, you can make the choice to share that information to do so much more than just solving a unsolved murder. It can help identify someone who doesn't have a name. It can help connect so many dots within this community just by taking some information and uploading it in a second spot. And to me, that's a very low effort way to advocate because you already have the information.
Yeah, I think having one of our grant programs that funds DNA testing and forensic genetic genealogy, I can just add a little bit of insight to that. So our two databases that operate, they're public databases. You have to opt in for law enforcement search. So just taking a tag 23andMe or Ancestry, they don't share personal information. They don't share your DNA data. You would have to actually upload that to one of these two public databases. That's GEDmatch and Family Tree. And then after uploading, you have to opt in to those four in order for them to be searchable. But I can't tell you guys, I mean, at Season of Justice, we've been able to fund over 180 cases in DNA testing in those cases, and 12 of those have led to solved cases. And we're talking homicides from the 1980s, where there was no lead, there was nothing left. They had a DNA profile, it was in CODIS, there was no match, and the next step was genetic genealogy. And all because one family member, one relative decided, I'm going to opt in, I'm going to upload my DNA and I'm going to opt into this. That's the one missing piece that gave these families just the answers. And I can't stress how important it is. Your data is anonymized. It's a lot of data. But you have that option. That's something that is, like Whitney said, very tangible and doable for us. If you've already taken the tests through one of the big, at-home DNA tests, you can absolutely, very easily and for free make an impact and, upload to those databases. So thank you for bringing that up. That's an extremely good point. We also talk about, like writing letters, to our representatives, to agencies, doing things like change.org petitions to get some movement in cases. Shayna, I know you've done a couple of those for cases. Can you talk a little bit about what that's like and how we can help amplify those efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. So we refer to those as just call to action campaigns. So we have found those to be very successful because of social media, power in numbers. It's a tool that we can call on supporters nationwide to participate in an action that will provide direct impact and change. So our first call to action that we started 2 years ago, and we still participate each week, is we ask supporters to email Governor Jay Inslee or to call him of Washington State and ask him to conduct a secondary independent review of Oakley Carlson's Washington DCYF case. The initial review that they did, it was done by an internal agency and not shared publicly. We feel that this lacks impartiality and transparency. So over the last 2 years of doing this, we have gotten some responses from his office in form of public statements, which is some movement. However, we are still pushing for this independent review. We've also gotten media to jump on it and ask him questions at press conferences, which has been really spectacular. So this is something that you, as advocates, you can do if you're working with a family. So if you're looking to create a letter or an email writing campaign, we suggest that you create a form letter for your supporters so they can copy and paste it. You want to make it easy for people, and you want to make sure your message is clear. There's also a really great website that we were recently just introduced to called Rally Starter, which is a digital platform for advocates to build action campaigns. And it's just rallystarter.com. And it actually loads the letter and has the email. And all you do is like click, 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 and it sends it all for you. So that's a really cool one to look at.
I want to add to that too, that if anyone's looking to start a petition or a campaign and mobilize support, another example would be like a change.org, where you can start a petition and then have people virtually sign and share that petition.
And being that voice of impacting change is such a meaningful part of advocacy. And oftentimes it's very necessary when policies change and there's need for new laws to be created. We talk about Oakley's case so much because it really is the heart of Light the Way. It's what we started with, and it's what we've just learned so many of our experiences, and we base them on that. So we had the opportunity to become a voice for change in foster care in Washington State. Last winter, we were able to testify at the Oakley Carlson Act hearing. Unfortunately, the bill died in committee, but we can continue to advocate for an amended bill that protects vulnerable foster care children and keeps their best interests at the forefront. Just yesterday, we helped a group of families whose children had been murdered or who have died because of negligence while under the watch of Washington DCYF, along with other Washington State foster parents and supporters. And we helped them organize a gathering at the Capitol building in Washington State in support of legislative changes for foster children. We say what may start on paper, like a letter writing or an email campaign, can grow quickly in time to opportunities like public gatherings and being part of that legislative process. So, take your opportunities, make sure that you are educated, and work with people who are ready to make some action and some change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that there are several different avenues that are available to us as the community. One of the one of the first times I ever met Whitney was at a memorial event for a family that for Leon Morales, a memorial event with his family. He was one of our awareness campaign subjects. We work very closely with Arlene, and I know Whitney did as well. And I think that was a very powerful moment, full circle for me. It was the first time I had ever been to anything like that. Have y'all ever, can y'all speak to, the importance of showing up to those events, those visuals, those honk and ride memorials, just, it doesn't seem like it's doing much, but we know from personal experience that just that show of support can really encourage a family. Yeah, if anybody wants to speak to their experiences with that.
Yeah, so I've been to a few vigils or honkin' waves. When we usually go out um to do this volunteer work, we take the advice from the families. They're like, this is what my case needs. We need to go search. We need to do honkin' wave. We need to get the word out there. So it's various things of whatever we do. We're kind of just leave it open to the families. But like you said, it seems so small, like the things that we did. I attended a vigil for Brian Vladeck Hassel a few months ago in Orlando, and I'd never met his family, his sisters, anything like that. And you would have thought that I built them a bridge. How excited, how happy they were that I was there. And I'm like, this is nothing compared to what I should be doing and what we all should be doing for these families. So it just showing up, just being there, it makes such a difference to these people that they don't get the help. They've struggled with law enforcement, or they don't have the funds to hire a private investigator, something like that. They just love it when even just one person shows up for them. And it makes me very emotional because that's how grateful they are. And I feel like I barely did anything. And I'm like, I should be doing more.
Uh, I agree with you 100%. If you have the opportunity to meet a family or get to know them, it is life changing. I have to say, honest, most times I am like good while I'm there. I hold it together, and the minute I get home, I get teary, and I just can't believe how strong and amazing and just how inspiring it feels. We oftentimes, because we work so closely with families, help plan vigils and gatherings. We feel very lucky to work with Julie Murray, who is the sister of Maura Murray, who has been missing for 20 years. Her vigil was just last month, and we had the honor of helping to plan it. And Julie is just an amazing advocate for all missing people. She is the queen of Engage with Empathy, and we're so proud of her for that. And this same thing, like what you're saying, like, helping Julie plan it was nothing for Tates and I to be able to do that, but she was just so grateful. And just to be able to know that she felt supported and she was happy with it, and it was a successful evening, it just makes it all worth it. Anytime I come back from a trip after being with a family, my heart is just so extremely full.
I like that you brought up Julie because she has the perfect analogy for families that are going through this. They're launched onto this island where they're alone. And just like Melissa was saying, just showing up and showing the support, proving that they're not alone, that someone's there behind them, can help. It helps rejuvenate them just like it rejuvenates us. And Melissa and I talk every time we go on a trip, we come back so motivated, and it's just re-energizes family members as well, knowing that they have someone behind them.
I can imagine I always when I talk to our families, that apply for awareness campaigns, it's a club nobody wants to be a part of. But it's also extremely isolating in your day-to-day world, because not many people are a part of this club. And so having just people who are there supporting, whether it's just showing up, whether it's sharing, posts on social media, or organizing those letter campaigns, it's invaluable. And so it doesn't feel like enough. I know we all want to do more, but sometimes that's exactly what it's exactly right. It's exactly right for what we can do and what we should be doing. And so I appreciate all of those. I think there are a couple of other things as well that, that we've talked about in conversations together, but like utilizing, if you've got special skills, like maybe you're connected in the media, or maybe you've got some search and rescue skills or something like that. I know you guys have done more organized searches, certainly than I have, and so I'd love to just get a little bit of insight on that. If somebody is has that experience or wants to get that experience, where do they start, and how do they make sure that they are operating responsibly when they're wanting to help and go out and do these public search and rescues as a volunteer?
Well, a lot goes into it, more than I ever anticipated, first of all. So our first foot search we ever got involved with was with the Brandon Lawson case. You have to get clearance from the landowners. You've got to get clearance from law enforcement, waivers. Like, it's a lot that goes into it, a lot of planning. We were fortunate enough to join a team, a very small team, when we went down to Brant, Texas, to search for Brandon. But it's not what I expected. It's the weather's never on your side. I'm gonna start there. Okay. Weather's never great. And you're literally looking for in a needle in a haystack. But responsible things, obviously, you cannot just go search by yourself. That will cause way more problems than anything. It has to be sanctioned. You can always look on social media, see if they're needing volunteers for a certain search. I know they'll be like, hey, we're having a search party for X, Y, and Z. We need to meet here, when they're trying to create a lot of bodies. We have like grid searches and walkie-talkies, and dogs are brought out. So a lot goes into it, and it's definitely not something that's thrown together in a night, and it has to be done legally, because you can get into a lot of trouble if it is not done that way.
Absolutely.
Very
Sorry.
dangerous as well.
Yes. Just like Melissa said, there's so much that goes into searches, and we don't recommend anybody doing that without permission, especially from law enforcement. In June of 2022, we coordinated our first civilian search and rescue, and it was to locate Oakley. Our local Washington volunteer, Lacey McMeekin, ran that search with 15 volunteers. That search was conducted with permission by law enforcement. And we, like I mentioned before, I don't think I can stress it enough, the importance of making sure that you have permission from law enforcement. They were also able to help us in planning out some of our search plans, it was really extremely helpful with law enforcement by our side.
Yes, like Tate said, do not do it without law enforcement. You can ruin an entire investigation, an entire case. Don't just jump out into a field because you think you could do it. There's so many steps you have to make sure you are covering before you go out there. And I know I'm just reiterating what they already said, but it's important.
I mean, we've got an audience from everywhere, from all parts. And I know Whitney, Melissa, and I are all in Texas. Property laws are very strict here in Texas. So again, I just, don't go on people's private property by yourself without sanction, just for your own personal safety. But also the integrity of the investigation should always be top of mind for anybody who is wanting to help, and get involved a little bit more and be a little bit more hands-on than others. So thank you guys. I think that's all extremely great points. We all talked a little bit about empathy. We talked about Julie Murray's engage with empathy. I would like to talk about that a little bit more, and just how important it is to always act with empathy at the forefront of, and being the guiding light behind every choice you make, every interaction, every post, everything that you do. It should always be with a heart of empathy. And so I'd love to get a little bit more from y'all on that and just personal stories as well.
Yeah. So for us, empathy is really so important for us as, victim-centered advocates. It's something that we think about with everything we do. And if we make a mistake, we think about what's an empathetic approach of how to fix it too. So when you think about empathy, you're putting yourself in the shoes of someone else, because when you think about having a missing loved one, it's probably the most traumatic situation of someone's life. And in many cases, the family member who's trying to survive, they're probably surviving from one moment to the next. So as a supporter, how are you trying to help them? So we try to provide a space where families are handled with care. We're sensitive to their needs. And honestly, sometimes our families are having a bad day and we can tell when we talk to them, and that's okay. That's all right. And we'll just say, okay, yep, we'll ask you again another day. We can tell when they're stressed, when they've had enough that day. But also that empathy is what gets them through their darkest moments. Sometimes you can tell when your family needs a joke, when they need a phone call. And empathy is important in situations like that. And when you're seeing these cases online and you may not necessarily know the family, try and put yourself in their shoes. Think about when you post. Is this something that you would want someone to say about you? Is this something you'd want someone to say about your son or daughter or your brother or sister? And if you see someone else posting about it, do you want to share something like that? Or if you hear a content creator, whether it's a podcast or YouTube, and it's salacious or it's kind of slimy, like, is that what you want to be subscribing to or giving your clicks and likes to? Because that's not empathetic and that's not what these family members need. And what we need to do as ethical true crime advocates is really bring these people and their families to the forefront. We went to the Cold Case Symposium in the fall. It was incredible. We encourage everybody to go if you get a chance. They also offer an online portion, and Ryan Bachman from Project Cold Case talked about real crime and true crime. And that was kind of life-changing for me. And I consider myself, empathetic and lots of compassion. And when I look at posts now, I think, is that a true crime post or is that a real crime post? And real crime posts are empathetic and they're compassion. And true crime posts, they're not usually. That's where you see the speculation and just the not putting families and victims at the center. So that's where we see empathy.
Ditto to all of those things. But also as a content creator for us, one of the steps we take, not only do we give all of our information to families, if we come across anything, we absolutely give them anything that they may not have on their own. We never charge them for FOIA requests if we take them. All of those bare basic common decency thoughts. But also we go on their timeline. Yes, we have deadlines for getting episodes out, but because they are not ready to talk about their case or they are struggling with reliving the trauma yet again, we go on their timeline. When they're ready to talk to us, we'll talk to them. We just got back from Arkansas and we are working with the daughter of a woman who was murdered 38 years ago, brutally murdered 38 years ago. And we were able to uncover some information while we were there on site. And she was so fired up and ready to go and get more information. But we had to kind of put her in check of slow down. You're taking in a lot of information. You need to breathe for a second. We need to make sure that you're mentally okay before we move forward with anything. And I think that's important as creators when you're working with families, of making sure that they're also okay throughout the whole process and not just trying to meet your deadline.
Absolutely. I think doing that, just kind of, a check-in, with even just putting up billboards for families. I have to ask them to find pictures. And sometimes it gets a little logistical. Hey, I need you to find me a high resolution picture, or, and it's hard because I need pictures, but, and that seems like such a minor thing, but at the same time, they're having to go through photo albums, memories. These are times that they lived, that they were there. And so having just that at the forefront and realizing it's not just finding pictures. It's sometimes I've got to check in and say, hey, it's okay if you need some time. I know this is hard. Let me know if I can help. Or, just making myself available in other ways. Those are really good points. And I love what that you brought that up, Shayna, about real crime versus true crime. I think that is, if nothing else is taken away tonight, like take that, because that's such a big and impactful way to view things, especially content. A lot of us ask, how can we make sure that what we're listening to or what we're consuming is ethical? Right there. You've answered that question right there. Is it real crime or is it true crime? And I think it's a wonderful way to state that. We're coming up a little bit on time. I want to make sure that we get some time in for questions. And so is there, just before we move on to some of these questions, leave the floor open for, just any last minute, like if there's, messages you want to give to our audience tonight. Yeah, right now would be an awesome time. So if there's anything else that y'all want to add to the conversation, and we could all talk about this for hours. So.
There's actually something that I wanted to chat about really quick that I probably should have mentioned earlier when you were talking about ways to help families. And I believe Whitney or Melissa mentioned it earlier, talking about sharing flyers and how easy that it is to share flyers. I mean, it's probably the simplest thing that you can do to advocate for someone. And us personally, like the way we actually, every Monday, we have a social media campaign called Missing Poster Monday that we started in the summer of 2022, so that families of missing individuals and advocates can post missing flyers every Monday using the hashtag Missing Poster Monday. You can search that hashtag and repost to help spread awareness for different cases. We encourage everyone to join and participate. Anytime you see a flyer, we encourage you to share it, because you just really never know who might see it or who it might be passed on to. We have personally successfully helped locate numerous missing persons just by sharing flyers alone.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Just to realize, when we're sitting here, just clicking share, and when we don't think that that's enough, that doesn't seem like such a big action that's going to make an impact. But like you said, all it takes is one person at the right time seeing that, and the more eyes you can get on something, the greater chances of that happening. So it's a really, really good point.
To piggyback on that, we did a panel about action-oriented advocacy, and people don't realize the ripple effect that a social media post can share. And one of the examples we gave was the quarterback of a NFL team somewhere in California. I'm not good at sports. So an NFL quarterback shared a Amber Alert, and within minutes, someone driving down a highway found the vehicle and the child was found alive within minutes because of his reach. And it was just a layperson, a regular civilian, nobody that had shared the post originally. So you don't understand how far it can reach by just doing one little thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just kind of getting into some of these questions, and these are questions for everyone. We've got one, so many podcasters share my mother's story, which is always appreciated. But then there's no further contact or updates. So why can't they continue to advocate on cases that that they feature on their show? Or, can y'all speak to some of the difficulties of that? Or, some of the reasons why? Yeah.
I will say that we are also human and we can make mistakes. I know that we personally, as a podcast, every episode we cover, we drop any important dates into our calendar. So sometimes there's days where there's 15 people's names listed on our calendar, and we attempt to reach out. I know that Melissa and I, again, I can only speak for Melissa and I, we attempt to reach out and we attempt to follow it. We have so many Google alerts set where we're trying to follow everyone's story, but we try. I can't make excuses for anyone else. I hate that has happened to you, and I hate that you feel forgotten or that your mother feels forgotten. I would hope that no one does it intentionally. I know that we don't. And if we have, please DM us so that we can make it right, and apologize, because we do try.
Absolutely. And then we've got another really good question. About building relationships with law enforcement. This can be difficult for advocates, just in general, not being the direct family members. This one is for everyone because we're all in the same position. A question regarding building relationships with law enforcement officers. All too often, attempting to work with law enforcement is met with near instant resistance. Out of several dozen contacts, only 2 have been receptive. What advice do you guys have for advocates who want to take that role with family permission, and kind of be that go-between?
So I have to say, we have been extremely lucky, like extremely lucky. I can't speak poorly about any of the law enforcement officers that we have worked with because they have all been receptive to our help. So the way that we approach it is, first of all, we're working with families directly. So the first thing we say to the families is, would you like our support with law enforcement? And we kind of explain what it is. We would like to be the person who kind of bridges the gap. You have hard questions, you want us to be the person who asks them, let us know. But we also have had really candid conversations with law enforcement about what they need. And with the people that we've been working with for a while, they've told us that they want to do advocacy, they want to have better relations with families, but sometimes they have a lot on their plate. So we have tried to find what's that middle approach. And as advocates, we've learned that they need billboards. We can get billboards. They need flyer events. They need more social media. We can do that. They need podcasts. They need news reports. Well, we can do that. So we find once we're working with families and families allow us, we go and we ask for a meeting. We introduce ourselves, we tell them who we are, and we have an email that includes the family, the law enforcement officer, and we say, we're here to help. We tell them, we're advocates, we're here to support you. What do you need in this case? We will find it. If there's a resource you need search and rescue, whatever you need, we will find it. And normally, they're receptive to it. Even the one time we kind of got a little pushback, eventually he was like, oh yeah, I will meet with you. And then we had a meeting and he was wonderful. So I think you have to go in and kind of be a little like, this is what I have to provide to you. Show them that you're there for the right reasons. You have the family permission. You are willing to do whatever you can. And I don't know that will work for every case. I can't say that will happen, but I know that starts the building of a positive relationship. And once you have that initial meeting, we have just found that our relationships have just flourished. So families have a difficult question or they're feeling frustrated. So Tates and I send the email and we ask the question, and then it's coming from a neutral person. And then, we share the answer with the family, but we can kind of have it come from us. And then it's not coming from law enforcement. So it's not as adversary. Sorry. And that has seemed to work for us. And I have to say, we have been so lucky. We work with an incredible law enforcement officer out of Olympia Police Department. He is the head of the missing persons unit. When I went down to meet him in Washington about 1.5 years ago, he sat down with me and he said, I want to know from you, what do I do when I get a big missing persons case? You're the expert at that. You've been dealing with all these cases. Tell me, what does a what does the department need to do? Because if I get a case like that, I want to know, what can I do to support families? What do I need to do to get out in the media? What does my department need to do? Like, what areas might we miss? And it was like shocking. I was not prepared for that question. But I do think that there are people in law enforcement that are out there whose brains have kind of changed and are looking at this team approach with, the IGG, and, we've got this wonderful way of solving cases, that they're not just looking as, this is law enforcement, these are our cases, we will solve them, and we will not expand our knowledge. I think that they're ready to, I'm not saying share all their information, but I think they're willing to think tank it a little bit more. And I think that that is a really amazing step for this community of families.
Absolutely. And we're kind of coming in on close. We've got this question from a couple of people. So what are some, for someone who wants to start working with families or approach families, can y'all talk about what is the best way to do that, the most empathetic and compassionate way to do that, and even just touch on respecting those boundaries again?
Yeah, for us, I definitely would never reach out to a family that wasn't already vocal on social media. The ones that are out there, they have the Find My Loved One Missing Person page. A lot of the times, those are not even ran by the actual family members. It's usually like a designated person that feeds through that. So yeah, just sending a Facebook message, completely respectable, like letting them know who you are, what your whole angle, like what you're trying to do, help them, that kind of thing. And then obviously don't badger them and follow up a million times. Like they'll reach back out when they're ready, if they're ever ready. Definitely, if they're not on social media, they're keeping a low profile. I would never dream of trying to like find them by stalkerish ways. That's absolutely not the correct way to go about it. So yeah, I always find mine on various Facebook posts, or if they've commented, that kind of thing. And we haven't had any families that were against us. I mean, yeah, we've had a couple that haven't responded and we kind of just left it at that. But other than that, all the families, they're wanting to get their loved one's case out there. They're wanting help in any possible way that they can. And it's incredible that they're willing to put themselves out there this much just to get their loved one's story out there, because it's to relive this day over and over again, because that's what they're going to have to do when they're telling you this story. It's traumatic for them over and over. So you definitely have to, handle it with care and empathy and stuff. So
Thank you so much, Melissa. As we're wrapping up, I want to say thank you guys so much for, it's Friday night. Y'all are spending your time with us and talking about these important conversations. And I'm extremely grateful. I know everybody watching is also extremely grateful. And so for the last question, they ask, y'all do such amazing work, and I personally know how much time, energy, and the emotional toll it takes. How do you balance it all with your everyday lives?
This question is funny to me because we're still figuring this out. And we have been asked this by so many people. And every time we get asked this, we're like, we're still figuring this out. It took us about 1.5 years to stop working on weekends. We would work like 7 days straight. And then we were like, okay, we need to stop. So we do take weekends off now. And then that same incredible officer that I was saying from the Olympia Police Department, when I met with him, his last question to me was, so what do you do to take care of yourself? And I literally was like this is what I used to do, is like, listen to podcasts and enjoy documentaries, but now this is my life. So I'm not really sure. And he said, you should find an outlet, because the trauma that these cases bring can absolutely be heartbreaking, and it can really take a toll on you. So I think that everybody who's listening, make sure as you follow these cases and work as advocates and create content. Like the officer said, please make sure to take care of yourself. And if you find a way to do it, please let us know.
Yes, please share. So thank you guys again so much for being here. I want to close by thanking everybody on the call who joined. I hope you guys got some valuable takeaways today and are ready to to make a big impact in these cases. Of course, Season of Justice could not exist without support, financial support, and just general support from our community. And so if you're looking for other ways to participate, maybe you don't have the time or the ability to join in physical searches, or be there, show up at memorials, and you want to affect change in other ways, you can. There are so many organizations out there like Season of Justice that exist to support these cold cases, and some of the easiest ways to support that is just financial, whether it's $1 or $5. I can personally tell everyone how grateful I am, to have an opportunity to be in this position and help these families, but I couldn't do it without y'all. So thank you guys so much again for being here, and for just the important information that y'all share, and for everything that you guys do. I love our community. I'm proud of y'all. I'm proud to be a part of this, and I'm proud to continue to see more cases, solved because of a change in mindset, and in a more empathetic and ethical, action moving forward from all of us. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. And with that, we will close. This is being recorded, so it will be available on our website by next week as well. There were a couple of questions we didn't get to, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that we will be following up. We will have answers to those questions. So be sure to follow, Season of Justice on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, at Season of Justice. And yeah, we will follow up with answers for that. And if you have any questions for us, for navigating advocacy and Light the Way, if you guys want to tell them how they can find you, how they can follow your journeys, and stay plugged into what you guys are doing.
Sure. We are Navigating Advocacy podcast everywhere. That's it on all of them. You can find us.
For us, our website is www.lightthewaymissing.com, and you can find links to all of our social media there.
I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all again. And I hope everybody has a good Friday night and a good weekend. And we will see y'all at our next virtual event.